Suppression versus behavior modification. Okay.
Yeah.
So when is it suppression and not behavior modification? And how does suppression play into behavior modification? Does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same idea versus we talked about last time with Bridget and Krista.
Right.
You're just correcting versus
correcting.
teaching.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
It's the same
frustrating.
shit.
Thank
Suppression is a part of behavior modification, right? In order to alter, if you are suppressing a behavior, are you also altering their behavior? I would say yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't suppressing something the first step of actually changing what it is that the dog is doing? Don't I have to suppress what I don't want in order to teach what I do want? Typically speaking, right? If I want at least a really balanced approach to stuff, absolutely, right? So yes, I am suppressing behaviors. I'm suppressing my dog's will to jump on people. I'm suppressing my dog's urge to bolt through the front door every time it opens up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. I'm suppressing the feeling of walking out of this podcast right now and getting some fucking hot chicken.
Yeah.
But I'm choosing a better behavior.
yeah, right. So that is a part of behavior modification, right? And I think these are just these are like trigger words that people use. You know, is punish and suppress and scare and fear and all of these types of things, right? But if you break any one of those down, fear, right? That's a big one that people are like, I don't want to scare my dog, right? If my dog is scared to do whatever, right? Attack another dog, right? If they're scared to attack another dog, isn't that kind of in a way teaching them to not do that, right? Yes, that means that they're afraid of the consequence that will happen if they do that, so they will just not do that in the first place then, right?
Right.
Et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Like these are all normal parts of life. There are things that I'm scared of. I'll give you a great example, right? I stumbled across this YouTube page couple days ago, a week ago, whatever it was, called what is it called? Hang on. I'll figure this out in half a second. Fresh Out. Right?
Is that fresh out the joint?
Fresh out of jail. Right? Prison.
Nice.
Right?
My favorite.
It's just ran by this guy that served like 15 years in prison, right? And all he does is answer people's questions about prison, basically, right? And he has other guests on that were a part of prison, and he talks about the cultural lifestyle and the gangs, the drugs, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he tells you all about it, right? It's
awesome.
really interesting,
Yeah.
right? I will tell you, some of the episodes that I listened to of this made me very, very scared to go to prison. I was in fear of going to prison. I do not want to go to prison. Right?
Yeah.
Do you think that is going to alter the things that I do in my life to make sure that I don't go there then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Get scared straight.
You see that new guy, David? Hell yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, so that's what I'm getting, right? Like, there are things I'm scared of that alter my behavior. It's behavior modification, right? It's or I should say, it is a part of behavior modification. The fear is not the behavior modification. The suppression is not the behavior modification. They're all pieces of that puzzle, right? Like, you could make a list. You could say behavior mod, right? And then just start jotting down all of the different pieces that apply to behavior modification, right? And all of those negatives are just a half of the equation, right? Then you have all of the positives of they do things and they accomplish things and they get reinforced and stuff like that. That also is a part of behavior modification. And that is a part of balanced training,
Exactly.
right? So I don't know. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and part of my spiel to kind of like tie that in with the whole food drive thing is I say, listen, I can train your dog to obey.
Sure.
But there's a difference between your dog obeying you because he wants to and because he has to.
Sure.
You know, there's two differences.
Yeah. There's differences from the standpoint of I would say the overall reliability with things, right? Or how you need to maintain that long term, right? I think that you have to find the balance as well of like the dog has to understand that they have to do it, right? But we also want to whatever extent it is, make them not hate that process as much as possible. And honestly, here's the thing. I'm less concerned that the dog loves doing all of these things, because here's the thing. There are so many things I do in my day-to-day that I don't necessarily love, right? But I want the dog to be somewhat indifferent, right? And if I could find a way with, say, the unfood motivated dogs where they're not so completely scared to not do so, right? And they're just more or less indifferent to the fact that they have to do these things. Typically speaking, I'm going to be okay with that as well.
Yeah.
Right? The food just helps with that process, right? And helps make it more reliable and more fun for the dog and for the owner, right? Because I think a lot of this also comes down to an owner standpoint of their perception of them enjoying the process of training their dog, you know? People aren't going to enjoy the process of training their dog if they're just correcting them all day long for everything.
Yeah,
You know
I
what
don't
mean?
even enjoy teaching that.
Sure. So, I think that's a lot of finding that balance as well.
So when is it actually unproductive suppression, if ever?
When it's not working.
Right.
I mean, like unproductive suppression, right? Like, I would say that that's a good question, but it's a subjective question from the standpoint of, like, I see people that use corrections as a way to just, like, stop annoying things temporarily. You know what I mean? Things that the dog is not necessarily aware of, that they may be suppressing it for half a second, right? But the dog is not conscious enough of what is actually being suppressed, where it never long-term fixes the problem. And then you fall into this trap of needing to nag the dog all the time with these consequences. And in your mind, you're suppressing that behavior, but you're not actually suppressing it.
Or it gets traded for a different behavior.
Exactly, right? And this is where, there was an interesting podcast. Are you familiar with Ivan Balabanov?
No.
We talked about whatever.
That's an awesome name, though.
Yeah. He's like Scandinavian or something, like whatever. Or Bulgarian. He's Bulgarian. So he's from Florida. He's like he's this world class competitive dog trainer in IPO, right? Like won like tons and tons of like world medals and stuff like that. Like very talented trainer down in Florida. He's kind of egotistical, right? Like, whatever. So he's got a new podcast, and he's been debating with a couple of different people, like Larry Crone and some other girl and stuff, on the idea of all of this, like, low-level e-collar conditioning and stuff like that. And basically how, one, it's not really helping the dog that much, and you're selling this falseness by saying that you're going to create a positive association with the e-collar, because in the end of the day, e-collars work because the dogs don't like them, right? Anyways, so he was discussing in one of the podcasts at one point that a lot of these force-free trainers and their ideology and their dislike of the e-collar has to do with the constant usage of it all the time, right? So what I mean by that is these people that are saying we're creating a positive with it and are like, sit down, come, and every time they're giving a command or using it, and they're saying they're amplifying the command by doing it, and we've classically conditioned that stim so that it elicits a positive response out of the dog and this and that. He's saying, we could argue if that works or not and stuff all day long, and they kind of debated that on the podcast a little bit, which was very interesting. You should definitely check it out.
Oh, well.
But yeah, look, most of these force-free trainers don't like that constant use of it, right? Because it's like, oh my God, we're shocking dogs all the time.
And if you're not a force-free trainer if you're using e-collar, though, right?
No. That's what he's saying is the force-free trainers don't like the balanced trainers that are preaching this. The e-collar is a good thing and constant usage of it and stuff like that. He's saying that that's their biggest issue with it, right? Which is an interesting thought because, one, it is kind of misleading to say that the dog likes the e-collar. The dog doesn't like the e-collar, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case. And if you're telling people that they need to use that e-collar all the time, that also is not very productive either, because we shouldn't have to use it all the time. The goal should be hitting a point of very minimal use of it, using it where you need to, but the dog just understanding how to avoid that, right? And frankly, I got to figure out where we kind of got into this, obviously, but I would guess, right? Let's say all these balanced or all these positive only trainers out there. I would guess that if we had a 100%, oh yeah, you were asking about productive suppression versus unproductive. Okay, all right. I'm figuring out where I'm going here. So
I do the same thing.
I would guess that if you took a positive only trainer, right, and we were able to for a second take away all these biases and take away all these opinions and stuff, and just tell them, I can give your dog one singular, really, really, really fucking big correction for your leash reactivity or whatever, you're jumping or this or that, and it will go away forever. Period. It will never come back. One time, right? 1 second of like extreme discomfort for the dog, and it will never, ever happen again. I would bet most of them would say, do it. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And I think the problem is because there's so many different ways of teaching the e-collar and because a lot of these people are preaching so much use of it, I think that is what's keeping such a part of what's keeping such a negative taste in people's mouth about that e-collar, right?
Yeah.
So as far as what is unproductive suppression, I think when we're using corrections in general, suppression that does not actually stop the behavioral issue, right?
Right.
Where you're contingent on doing it all the time in order for it to actually go away, right? I think that's where it's unproductive.
Training that is focused on the symptoms and not the disease.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That was bothering me for a while. It was just driving me crazy.
I think that's a wonderful thing for, people that don't have trained dogs or anything like that. I think it's a wonderful way to look at it, not working suppressive behavior. Because I see my friends that have dogs do it literally all the time. It's like you're not fixing the problem ever, and they have to just keep pounding on their dog.
Nag.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a good way to look at it from the outside in.
Yeah.
And that you're not when do you get that you're not communicating properly with your dog? Because some people just never, it's like they never learn.
Yeah.
Just like their dog never learns, they're never learning that what they're doing is obviously not communicating properly.
And the best option, the most humane, most kind choice that you can make is not always made for TV. We talked about that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just not, the bonker.
That was a funny video when you sent me that, because I've seen that one circle around a lot.
I didn't know what that was
before.
at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just a towel that he took over the dog's head and it got its focus right away. And sometimes,
Listen, it is not a pretty tool, and that it's one that I understand how effective it is. Like I've seen some dogs that is like the magic tool for, where nothing else works, right? And it solves these problems like seemingly instantaneously, but it is an absolute last resort for me, right? As far as a tool that I'll use, because it just looks so bad.
doesn't look pretty. Does not look pretty. What'd the 5 fingers say to the face?
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing though, when there's a dog that's just you have to use it. I mean, I've seen him have to use it maybe twice.
Yeah.
And I just remember this dog, I think he was it was something with the bath. They were trying to give him a bath, and this dog was just, it would not get in the tub. And once the tub would jump out and everything, and they did everything, and then he finally just gave it a little bonk, and the dog was like,
yeah.
And then was fine the rest of the time, but it was just one just one, and it wasn't, it's just boop.
And that's where you get into the effectiveness of certain corrections, and going back to all these trigger words we talked about that are a part of behavioral modification. Pain, fear, discomfort, this, that, right? The reason why the bonker is so effective of a tool with dogs is because it's not utilizing pain, it's utilizing fear, right? So I'm using two big trigger words right now and saying that they are actually effective, good things in the dog training world at times, right? Now, why is fear going to be more effective than quote unquote pain? Because here's the thing, an e-collar, high level correction on an e-collar, the discomfort or the pain is what deters the behavior. Well, I know people that can handle a lot of fucking pain. Right?
Yeah.
You could hit them all day long. They could do all this crazy shit. They don't care. They don't care if they break their arm. They don't care if they do any of these types of things, right?
Skaters.
But if they are scared of something, that's a powerful motivator, man.
Yeah.
Like we talked about last time with the snakes, right?
Yeah.
Where I said, I'm scared as shit of snakes, right? I'm not scared of getting bit by a dog. Obviously I don't want it to happen and stuff like that, but I don't have this deep ingrained fear of that.
At
right?
least you can just treat the wound and not have Dobe suck out the venom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a good one's like let's say Conor McGregor, someone like that. He'll beat the wheels off of anybody any day. He's not worried about fighting someone.
Except Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
Ooh, round 2 coming up July. I'm ready for it.
It's nice to see
Round
that.
3,
three,
actually.
yeah.
3.
It's nice to see that chin aging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's humbling.
but
isn't
I'm
it?
sure there's something that he's scared of that you like spiders maybe, those
Khabib.
spiders at Connor. It
Yeah.
could be
A Khabib spider.
a Khabib spider, yeah.
He is basically
know?
a spider.
Yeah. But I'm glad that you got back to that because, I think it's I think it's more society than anything, but I hate like flavor text. It's just like,
Yeah.
it just puts such a damper on things for people, or it makes them in fear of like working with their dog correctly. They're like,
It's like that e-collar correction is going to be a little uncomfortable for your dog. It's like, no, it's going to hurt. They're not going to like it. Right?
Zach George
Like-
doesn't do this on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah, but that flavor text,
Yeah.
people get, like you were saying, they just get so hung up on the words.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah. So, anyways,
So
cruising along.